The UES Aurora drifted silently through the void between stars, her hull gleaming silver against the endless black of space. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the distant yellow star of Kepler 442 grow larger through the main viewport. The research vessel had been traveling for 3 months to reach this system, and Jake could feel the excitement building among his crew of 12. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her communications console, pushing a strand of brown hair behind her ear. She had been monitoring radio frequencies for the past week, hoping to detect any signs of intelligent life in the system. The silence had been disappointing, but that was normal for deep space exploration. Most systems they visited were empty of life, let alone intelligent civilizations. Dr. Ben Rodriguez floated past Jake's chair, moving toward the science station with practiced ease in the ship's low gravity. The xenobiologist had spent years studying theoretical alien life forms, but he had never actually encountered any. Earth had been alone in the galaxy for as long as humans had been looking to the stars. This mission was just another routine survey, cataloging planets and searching for resources that future colonies might need. The Aurora was humanity's most advanced exploration ship, built specifically for long-range missions into unknown space. Her crew was handpicked from the best scientists and officers in the Colonial Defense Force. Jake had commanded her for 2 years, and they had surveyed 14 systems without finding so much as a microbe. Still, the work was important, mapping the galaxy for future generations of humans who would spread among the stars. Gary Collins, the weapons officer, was running diagnostics on the ship's defensive systems. The Aurora carried only basic armaments, enough to deal with space debris or aggressive wildlife on unexplored planets. She was not built for combat, and Jake hoped she would never need to be. Humanity had learned long ago that exploration was safer when done peacefully. The ship's AI chimed softly, indicating they had reached the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Jake ordered the crew to begin their standard survey protocols. Amy started scanning for any artificial signals while Ben prepared his instruments to analyze the composition of the system's 7 planets. The routine was familiar and comforting, a series of well-practiced steps that had become second nature over countless missions. That routine was shattered when Amy's console erupted in a cascade of warning lights and alarm tones. She stared at her screen in disbelief, her hands trembling as she adjusted the controls. The readings were impossible, showing a complex artificial signal coming from the inner system. Not only was it artificial, but it was powerful enough to reach across interstellar space. Jake rushed to Amy's station, looking over her shoulder at the impossible data streaming across her monitors. The signal was definitely not natural, showing the mathematical precision that could only come from an intelligent source. More importantly, it was structured like a distress call, repeating the same pattern over and over with increasing urgency. Ben abandoned his planetary scans and joined them at the communication station, his scientific curiosity overriding everything else. The signal was unlike anything in human databases, using frequencies and modulation techniques that no Earth technology had ever produced. Whatever was sending this message was not human, and it was clearly in trouble. Amy worked frantically to decode the alien transmission, running it through every linguistic algorithm in the ship's computer. The mathematical portions were easier to understand, showing star maps and coordinate systems that she could interpret. The rest remained a mystery, but the urgency was unmistakable. Someone or something was calling for help. Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. First contact protocols were clear about avoiding interference with alien civilizations, but those protocols assumed peaceful encounters under controlled conditions. This was different, a civilization in distress that might not survive long enough for Earth to send a proper diplomatic mission. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems and the steady pulse of the alien distress signal. Every member of the crew understood the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Humanity had just received its first message from another intelligent species, and that species was asking for help. Dr. Rodriguez finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. He explained what his analysis had revealed about the signal's origin. It was coming from a highly advanced civilization, one that had clearly mastered interstellar communication and probably space travel. The fact that they were calling for help suggested they faced a threat beyond their ability to handle alone. Amy continued working on the translation, making slow but steady progress with the alien language. Key phrases began to emerge from the mathematical chaos, words that seemed to indicate concepts like attack, invasion, and destruction. Whatever was happening to the signal's creators, it was serious enough to risk broadcasting their location to unknown civilizations across the galaxy. Jake called his senior officers together for an emergency meeting in the ship's small conference room. The decision they made in the next few minutes would change the course of human history, though none of them realized it at the time. They could follow regulations and return to Earth with news of the discovery, leaving the aliens to their fate. Or they could respond to the distress call and risk their ship and crew for people they had never met. The debate was shorter than Jake had expected. Every officer spoke in favor of responding to the alien signal, despite the risks and the violation of protocols. Dr. Rodriguez argued that they had a moral obligation to help any intelligent species in distress. Gary Collins pointed out that their weapons, while limited, might be more effective than the aliens expected. Amy had already begun composing a response message, working to establish communication with whoever was calling for help. Jake made his decision, knowing it would define the rest of his career and possibly the future of humanity. The Aurora would answer the alien distress call and offer whatever assistance they could provide. He ordered Amy to prepare a response signal while he composed a message to Earth Command, explaining their situation and requesting immediate backup. The response message was simple, using the same mathematical framework as the alien signal but identifying the Aurora as a ship from another species willing to help. Amy transmitted it toward the source of the distress call, then began plotting a course to the inner system where the signals originated. As the Aurora changed course and began accelerating toward the unknown, Jake stood once again at the main viewport, watching the yellow star grow brighter. Somewhere ahead of them, an alien civilization was fighting for its survival. The humans were coming to help, though none of them understood yet that they were about to introduce themselves to the galaxy as the most dangerous species ever encountered. Admiral Lisa Park stood in the command center of Colonial Defense Force headquarters, reading Commander Morrison's message for the third time. The words seemed impossible, yet the transmission codes were authentic and the signal analysis confirmed its interstellar origin. Humanity had just received its first communication from an alien species, and that species was under attack by another hostile alien force. The secure briefing room filled quickly as the most important people in Earth's government arrived for the emergency session. President Carl Johnson looked tired as he took his seat at the head of the conference table, followed by Fleet Admiral Danny White and Secretary of Defense Patricia Wells. Dr. Helen Wright, Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact, hurried in last, carrying a tablet loaded with first contact protocols that suddenly seemed inadequate. Admiral Park activated the holographic display and played Morrison's transmission for the assembled leaders. The commander's voice was steady, despite the magnitude of his report, describing the alien distress signal and his crew's decision to respond. The technical data that followed painted a picture of a highly advanced civilization under siege by an aggressive enemy force. President Johnson rubbed his temples as the implications sank in. Earth's non-interference policy had been developed for peaceful contact scenarios, not military emergencies involving unknown alien powers. The decision they made in the next few hours would determine humanity's introduction to galactic politics, and there was no precedent to guide them. Fleet. Admiral White studied the tactical data from Morrison's report, his experienced eye picking out details that others missed. The alien distress signal showed evidence of advanced technology, but also indicated a species that was losing badly against their attackers. The enemy force appeared to be overwhelming in numbers, using tactics that suggested they were experienced conquerors. Dr. Wright presented her analysis of the alien communications, explaining what little they could understand about the species involved. The victims called themselves something that translated roughly to Zephyrians, peaceful beings who had never developed serious military capabilities. Their attackers were identified as Vorthons, a name that appeared in the transmission with obvious fear and hatred. The debate that followed revealed the deep divisions within Earth's leadership about humanity's role in the galaxy. President Johnson argued for caution, pointing out that Earth knew nothing about galactic politics or the consequences of military intervention. The Vorthons might have legitimate grievances against the Zephyrians, or this conflict might be part of a larger war that humans could not understand. Admiral White disagreed strongly, his voice rising as he described the moral implications of inaction. An entire civilization was facing extinction while Earth's leaders debated policy. The Colonial Defense Force existed to protect human interests, but those interests included maintaining humanity's honor and reputation among potential alien allies. Dr. Wright added her perspective as someone who had spent years studying theoretical alien contact scenarios. Most of her models assumed that first contact would be peaceful, with time for careful diplomacy and cultural exchange. This situation was completely different, forcing humanity to choose sides in an alien war based on incomplete information and moral instincts. The discussion continued for hours, with advisors presenting arguments for every possible course of action. Some suggested sending a diplomatic mission to mediate between the warring species. Others recommended avoiding the conflict entirely and focusing on learning about galactic civilization through observation. A few hardliners even proposed using the situation to gather intelligence on alien military capabilities. Admiral Park finally ended the debate by presenting the military realities that governed their options. Morrison's ship was already committed to helping the Zephyrians, meaning that Earth's first contact had already been made. The only question was whether to support him with additional forces or leave him to face the consequences alone. The president called for a formal vote, and the result was closer than anyone expected. 7 officials voted to authorize military intervention, while 5 voted for a diplomatic approach that would likely arrive too late to help anyone. The deciding factor was Secretary Wells's argument that abandoning Morrison would send the wrong message about human reliability to any potential alien allies. Admiral Park received authorization to assemble a fleet capable of supporting Morrison's mission and dealing with whatever threats they might encounter. The 3rd Colonial Fleet was selected for the operation, commanded by Admiral Kevin Stone, a veteran officer known for his tactical innovation and aggressive leadership style. The fleet consisted of 21 ships, representing nearly 1/3 of Earth's total deep space naval capacity. Admiral Stone arrived at fleet headquarters within hours of receiving his orders, immediately beginning preparations for the most important mission in human history. His flagship was the UES Vengeance, a massive dreadnought equipped with the most advanced weapons Earth could produce. Supporting her were 12 destroyers, 6 heavy cruisers, and 3 carriers loaded with fighters and Marines. The Marine contingent was led by Colonel Ryan Murphy, whose 47th Colonial Marines had earned their reputation fighting pirates and rebels in the outer colonies. Murphy's 3,000 soldiers were equipped with the latest powered armor and weapons designed for combat in any environment. They had trained for years to fight human enemies, but their equipment and tactics would soon be tested against alien forces. Captain Nina Foster, the fleet's intelligence officer, worked frantically to analyze every piece of data from Morrison's transmission. Her computers ran thousands of simulations, trying to predict Vorthon tactics and capabilities based on limited information. The results were disturbing, showing an enemy force that relied on overwhelming numbers and superior technology to crush their opponents. Dr. Wright joined the fleet as their xenosociology advisor, bringing her theoretical knowledge of alien behavior and communication. She worked with Foster to develop plans for communicating with both species, creating translation protocols that might work even if the universal translator algorithms failed. Her presence also ensured that first contact procedures would be followed, as much as possible during military operations. The fleet's departure from Earth orbit was broadcast live to the entire planet, marking humanity's first military expedition beyond the solar system. Millions of people watched as the ships formed up and engaged their faster-than-light drives, disappearing into the void between stars. The journey to Zephyrian space would take 2 weeks, during which the crew would prepare for combat against an unknown enemy. Admiral Stone gathered his senior officers for final briefings as the fleet traveled through hyperspace. The tactical situation was unlike anything in human military history, requiring them to adapt their strategies for three-dimensional space combat against aliens with unknown capabilities. The one advantage they might have was that no alien species had ever fought humans before, meaning their enemies would not know what to expect. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, sensors immediately detecting the signs of a massive space battle in progress near the inner planets. Morrison's ship was still transmitting, but the tactical display showed her surrounded by hundreds of alien vessels. The Third Colonial Fleet had arrived just in time, but they were about to face odds that would have terrified any sane military commander. The UES Aurora shook violently as another Vorthon energy blast struck her failing shields. Commander Morrison gripped his chair tightly, watching the tactical display show 300 enemy ships closing in on their position. The alien vessels moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. For 18 hours, Morrison's small research ship had been dancing through space, using every trick he knew to avoid complete destruction. Amy. Carter looked up from her communication station, her face pale with exhaustion. She had been working non-stop to maintain contact with the Zephyrian fleet while intercepting Vorthon battle communications. The alien defenders were falling back toward their homeworld, their crystalline ships breaking apart under the relentless enemy assault. Each transmission from the Zephyrians carried more desperation, as their defense platforms were systematically destroyed. Dr. Rodriguez floated past Morrison's chair, heading toward the science station where he had been analyzing the alien species. They were trying to help. The Zephyrians were beautiful creatures, their bodies made of living crystal that shifted through different colors as they communicated. They were clearly peaceful beings who had never developed weapons of war, relying instead on energy shields and evasive maneuvers that were proving inadequate against Vorthon aggression. The Vorthons were the complete opposite of their victims, large reptilian beings whose ships looked like predatory animals built for hunting. Their communications were harsh and brutal, filled with references to conquest and submission that made Rodriguez's skin crawl. These were not beings who negotiated or showed mercy, but conquerors who took what they wanted by force. Gary Collins worked desperately at his weapons console, trying to make the Aurora's limited armaments more effective against alien technology. The research ship carried only basic defensive weapons, plasma cannons designed to clear space debris and deterrent, missiles meant to discourage pirates. Against the Vorthon war fleet, these weapons should have been completely useless. Yet somehow the Aurora was still alive and fighting. Morrison's tactical skills, learned from years of combat training, were proving more effective than anyone had expected. The human ship moved through space in ways that confused the alien attackers, using gravity wells and asteroid fields to create unexpected advantages. Every time the Vorthons thought they had cornered the small vessel, it would slip away using maneuvers no other species had ever attempted. The breakthrough came when Amy successfully established direct communication with the Zephyrian fleet commander, Admiral Kalen Brightstar. The alien's crystalline face appeared on the main screen, his colors shifting rapidly between blue and purple in what Rodriguez recognized as extreme distress. The Zephyrian spoke in musical tones that the universal translator struggled to interpret, but his meaning was clear. Morrison found himself talking to the first alien commander in human history, trying to coordinate their defense efforts while dodging enemy fire. Admiral Brightstar was amazed that another species had come to help them, but he warned Morrison that resistance was hopeless. The Vorthons had conquered dozens of worlds using the same overwhelming tactics, and no civilization had ever successfully opposed them. The conversation was interrupted when Collins detected massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. Morrison's heart leaped as he recognized the distinctive drive signatures of Earth ships, 21 vessels dropping. Out of hyperspace in perfect formation, the Third Colonial Fleet had arrived, and they were already moving toward the battle at maximum speed. Admiral Stone's voice crackled across the communication channel, calm and professional, despite the desperate situation. The fleet commander had been monitoring the battle since their arrival, assessing the tactical situation while his ships moved into attack position. What he saw was his research vessel somehow holding off an entire alien armada through superior tactics and sheer determination. War Commander Thex Bloodclaw noticed the new arrivals from his position on the Vorthon flagship, but he was not immediately concerned. 21 ships against 300 seemed like acceptable odds, especially since these newcomers appeared to be from the same species as the annoying research vessel that had been harassing his fleet. He ordered a squadron of 50 ships to deal with the reinforcements while the main fleet continued its assault on the Zephyrian homeworld. The Vorthon squadron moved toward the human fleet in standard attack formation, energy weapons charging, for the opening bombardment that would scatter or destroy the enemy ships. Bloodclaw had used these tactics successfully for decades, overwhelming his opponents with superior numbers and firepower. No species had ever withstood a concentrated Vorthon assault, and he saw no reason why these aliens would be different. Admiral Stone watched the approaching enemy ships and smiled grimly. The Vorthons were moving exactly as intelligence had predicted, bunched together in tight formations that maximized their firepower, but made them vulnerable to concentrated counterattacks. He ordered his fleet to maintain course and speed, drawing the enemy squadron further away from their main force. The first exchange of fire shattered every assumption about galactic warfare that both sides had held. The Vorthon energy beams struck the human ships, but failed to penetrate their armor, which had been designed to withstand the intense radiation and particle bombardment of deep space travel. The human return fire was devastating. Kinetic projectiles and plasma beams that tore through Vorthon shields like they were made of paper. Collins watched from the Aurora as 12 Vorthon ships simply disappeared in the first salvo from Admiral Stone's fleet. The human weapons were designed for a completely different type of warfare, optimized for maximum destruction rather than the precise energy exchanges favored by galactic civilizations. Each human ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and they were using all of it against the advancing enemy. The battle became a slaughter as the human fleet demonstrated tactics that no alien species had ever seen. Instead of maintaining long-range and trading careful shots, the Earth ships charged directly into the enemy formation while firing continuously. Destroyers rammed through Vorthon lines while unleashing devastating broadsides, their captains using their ships like guided missiles with crews. Admiral Brightstar watched the impossible battle from his command ship, his crystalline body shifting through colors that had no translation in any known language. The humans were fighting with a ferocity and innovation that defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about warfare. These newcomers were not just helping them survive. They were completely destroying an enemy force that had seemed invincible. Bloodclaw realized too late that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not like any species he had ever encountered, fighting with a combination of advanced technology and suicidal bravery that made them incredibly dangerous. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat and regroup, but the human fleet was already moving to engage his main force. Morrison felt the Aurora shudder as her engines came back online. The immediate threat finally passed. Around them, the wreckage of 50 Vorthon ships drifted in space while the Earth fleet reformed for their next attack. The impossible had happened, and humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching his tactical display as the Vorthon main fleet turned to face the approaching human ships. The enemy formation was massive, over 200 vessels arranged in the standard galactic battle formation that had conquered dozens of worlds. What the Vorthons did not realize was that human military doctrine had been developed through centuries of warfare against other humans, creating tactics that no alien species had ever encountered. War Commander Bloodclaw felt uncertainty creeping into his thoughts as he studied the approaching Earth fleet. The destruction of his advanced squadron had been swift and brutal, demonstrating weapons technology that seemed designed purely for maximum destruction. These humans fought like no species he had ever faced, showing a willingness to risk their ships in ways that violated every principle of galactic warfare. Captain Tony Richards commanded the destroyer UES Hammer, leading the human charge toward the alien battle line. His ship was smaller than most Vorthan vessels, but she carried enough firepower to destroy targets many times her size. Richards had been born on Mars, where the lower gravity had taught him to think in 3 dimensions, and he intended to use every advantage his ship possessed against the enemy formation. The Vorthans opened fire first, sending streams of energy across space toward the advancing human fleet. Their weapons were precise and powerful, designed to disable enemy ships rather than destroy them completely. Galactic warfare traditionally focused on capturing intact vessels and minimizing casualties, concepts that humans had never adopted in their own conflicts. The human ships absorbed the alien fire on their heavy armor, systems designed to survive the harsh environment of deep space travel. Admiral Stone had ordered his fleet to close to point-blank range before returning fire, knowing that human weapons would be most effective at short distances. The Earth ships continued their charge without slowing, their crews preparing for the type of close-quarters battle that had defined human warfare for millennia. Colonel Murphy watched the space battle from the troop compartment of his assault transport, knowing that his Marines would soon be needed on the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld. The Vorthans had landed invasion forces on 3 continents, and intelligence reports suggested they were using the civilian population as hostages to prevent orbital bombardment. This was exactly the type of mission Murphy's soldiers had trained for, though they had never expected to fight aliens. Dr. Rodriguez continued monitoring alien communications from his station aboard the Aurora, translating the increasingly frantic messages between Vorthan ships. The reptilian commanders were clearly confused by human tactics, discussing concepts they had never encountered in 50 years of conquest. Words like ramming speed and boarding actions appeared repeatedly in their transmissions, suggesting they were struggling to understand how humans approached warfare. The moment of impact came when Richards ordered his destroyer to punch through the center of the Vorthan line, firing in all directions as his ship carved a path through the enemy formation. The UES Hammer took massive damage from concentrated alien fire, but her crew kept fighting even as sections of the ship were torn away by enemy weapons. The sight of a human vessel willing to sacrifice itself for tactical advantage sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Captain Nina Foster analyzed the battle from her intelligence station, noting how Vorthan formations began to break apart as individual ships tried to avoid the suicidal human attacks. The aliens were clearly not prepared for enemies who viewed their ships as expendable weapons rather than precious resources to be preserved. Each human vessel that broke through their lines caused dozens of Vorthan ships to scatter in confusion. Admiral Stone activated the Prometheus Protocol, humanity's most advanced battle management system. The fleet's artificial intelligence began coordinating attacks with mathematical precision, creating targeting solutions that organic minds could never calculate. Human ships moved in perfect synchronization, their combined firepower creating crossfire patterns that made Vorthan shields completely useless. Sergeant Kate Morgan prepared her Marine squad for deployment as their assault shuttle launched from the carrier UES Liberty. Their mission was to capture a Vorthan command post on the planet's surface, using drop pods to land directly in enemy territory. Morgan had fought pirates and rebels across human space, but this would be her first battle against non-human opponents. The tide of battle turned decisively when the human fleet demonstrated their superior coordination and firepower. Vorthan ships that had seemed invincible against Zephyrian forces found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by Earth vessels that fought with complete disregard for their own safety. The aliens had built their empire on intimidation and overwhelming numbers, but humans refused to be intimidated by anything. War Commander Bloodclaw watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed by tactics he could not comprehend. The humans used their ships like guided weapons, ramming through Vorthan formations while firing continuously. Individual human vessels would sacrifice themselves to create openings for their companions, showing a level of coordination and dedication that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Admiral Brightstar observed the impossible battle from his crystal ship, his body shifting through colors that represented amazement and gratitude. The humans were not just defeating the Vorthans, they were completely destroying an enemy force that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. These newcomers fought with such intensity that even their damaged ships continued attacking until they were completely disabled. The breakthrough moment came when Colonel Murphy's Marines landed on the planet's surface, using tactics that shocked both alien species. Instead of the careful ground assaults typical of galactic warfare, the humans used drop pods to assault Vorthon positions directly. Marine squads landed on top of enemy fortifications and fought their way inside, capturing strategic positions that the aliens had considered impregnable. Sergeant Morgan led her squad in a direct assault on a Vorthon heavy weapons platform, using demolition charges to blast through the alien defenses. The reptilian soldiers inside had never faced enemies who attacked with such aggression, and their resistance collapsed quickly when confronted by human Marines in powered armor. The captured position gave the Earth forces a crucial advantage in the ground battle. The space battle reached its climax when Admiral Stone ordered a concentrated assault on the Vorthon flagship. Every human ship that could still fight converged on Bloodclaw's massive vessel, overwhelming its defenses through sheer firepower and determination. The alien commander found himself facing a choice he had never imagined making in 50 years of conquest. Bloodclaw broadcast his surrender on all frequencies, ordering his remaining ships to cease fire and withdraw from the system. The proud Vorthon fleet that had never known defeat was retreating for the first time in its history, broken by an enemy they had never expected to encounter. The humans had achieved something no other species had managed in half a century of galactic warfare. The Battle of Sanctuary ended with the complete liberation of the Zephyrian homeworld and the destruction of over 200 Vorthon ships. Human casualties were remarkably light considering the odds they had faced, with only 3 destroyers seriously damaged and fewer than 50 Marines killed or wounded. The disparity in losses would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy as word of the battle spread. Admiral Stone received Admiral Brightstar's formal gratitude for humanity's intervention, beginning diplomatic relations between their species. More importantly, the Vorthon retreat was being monitored by intelligence agents from dozens of other civilizations, and the news would spread quickly throughout galactic space. Humanity had announced its arrival as a major power in the most dramatic way possible, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after the Battle of Sanctuary, Commander Morrison found himself aboard the newly constructed UES Diplomat, humanity's first official embassy ship. The vessel was sleek and peaceful in design, built specifically for diplomatic missions rather than military operations. Morrison had been chosen to lead the human delegation to the Galactic Council, a responsibility that still seemed impossible to believe. Ambassador Patricia Wells stood at the observation deck, watching the massive space station that housed the council chambers grow larger through the viewport. The structure was ancient by human standards, built over 800 years ago by civilizations that had mastered interstellar travel when Earth was still in its medieval period. 47 different species called this place home, representing every major civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Helen Wright worked frantically at her research station, preparing for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. Her computers were loaded with everything humanity had learned about galactic politics in the past 3 months, much of it provided by their new Zephyrian allies. The information painted a picture of a galaxy that had been stable for centuries, until humanity arrived and changed everything. The council chambers were vast beyond imagination, designed to accommodate species of every possible size and environmental requirement. Crystalline beings floated in energy fields while gaseous entities swirled in specially designed containment areas. Water-breathing species observed from massive aquarium-like structures, and the air itself hummed with translation devices working in dozens of languages simultaneously. Counselor Vex Mindweaver of the Ethereal Collective served as the current council president, his energy form shifting between different colors as he addressed the assembled delegates. The Ethereals had been galactic peacekeepers for over 4 centuries, using their advanced mental abilities to mediate disputes between species. Even they seemed uncertain how to handle humanity's dramatic entrance into galactic politics. Ambassador Zara Lightbender of the Crystalline Federation spoke first, her rainbow-colored body pulsing with agitation as she addressed the human delegation. The Crystallines were among the oldest spacefaring species, and they viewed humans with deep suspicion. She argued that any species capable of such devastating military power was too dangerous to be granted council membership. Queen voice, Sarah Unity Mind, represented the hive minds, a collective consciousness that had difficulty understanding human individualism. Her synthetic body was designed for communication with single-minded species, and she struggled to comprehend how humans could coordinate military actions without sharing a single consciousness. The concept of individual soldiers choosing to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage was completely alien to her experience. Minister Aidan Starweaver spoke for the Zephyrian delegation, his crystalline form glowing with gratitude as he defended humanity's actions. He described how the Vorthons had terrorized the galaxy for 50 years, conquering world after world, while the Council debated peaceful solutions. The humans had accomplished in 3 days what the combined galactic community had failed to achieve in 5 decades. The debate revealed deep philosophical differences about the nature of warfare and civilization. Most Council species had evolved on peaceful worlds where cooperation was necessary for survival. Their concept of conflict resolution involved careful negotiation and compromise, tactics that had proven useless against Vorthon aggression. Humanity's approach to warfare was so foreign that many delegates struggled to understand it. Dr. Wright provided crucial context about human evolution and development, explaining how Earth's harsh environment had shaped their species differently than most galactic civilizations. Humans had evolved on what galactic science classified as a Class 12 death world, where survival required constant adaptation and competition. This background had created a species uniquely suited for military conflict. The discussions were interrupted when emergency alarms sounded throughout the station. Captain Nina Foster, monitoring galactic communication networks, detected massive energy signatures breaking through the galactic barrier in the outer rim. The readings were unlike anything in Council databases, showing the distinctive patterns of the Devourer swarm. Counselor Mindweaver's energy form turned dark with fear as he explained the threat to the human delegation. The Devourer swarm was a mechanical intelligence that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into more machines for its endless expansion. The galaxy had contained them behind massive energy barriers for over 1,000 years, but those barriers were finally failing. Emergency sessions convened as reports flooded in from the outer rim. The mechanical swarm had already consumed 3 uninhabited systems, their self-replicating machines adapting to every weapon the Council forces had used against them. Traditional galactic military doctrine was proving completely ineffective against an enemy that learned from every engagement. Admiral Park received the emergency transmission at Earth Command, immediately beginning preparations for humanity's largest military deployment ever. The 4th and 5th Colonial Fleets were assembled under Admiral Stone's overall command, representing nearly half of Earth's total naval capacity. The mission parameters were simple but terrifying. Stop the Devourer swarm before it reached populated systems. Ambassador Wells stood before the Galactic Council and made an offer that changed the course of galactic history. Humanity would take responsibility for containing the Devourer swarm, using their unique military capabilities to fight an enemy that had defeated every other species. In exchange, humans wanted full Council membership and the right to establish colonies in uninhabited systems. The vote was unanimous, driven by desperation and the lack of any alternative. The Council species had tried for centuries to develop effective weapons against the Devourers, but their peaceful nature made it difficult to create truly destructive technologies. Humanity had already demonstrated that they possessed both the weapons and the tactical mindset necessary for total warfare. Colonel Murphy's expanded Marine Corps prepared for the most challenging mission in human history. The Devourer machines were known to be incredibly resilient, capable of self-repair and adaptation that made them nearly indestructible. However, they had never faced enemies who specialized in finding new ways to destroy things that seemed indestructible. The combined human fleet departed for the Outer Rim, with the prayers of 47 species following them into the void. Admiral Stone's forces represented humanity's commitment to their new galactic responsibilities, but also their determination to prove that the species from Earth could handle any threat the universe presented. Sergeant Morgan stood in the transport bay of her assault ship, checking her weapons one final time before deployment. The intelligence reports described Devourer combat units as mechanical nightmares designed for maximum efficiency in destroying organic life. Her Marines had trained against every possible enemy scenario, but they were about to face something completely outside human experience. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Devourer territory to find a scene of absolute devastation. Entire solar systems had been stripped down to their basic elements, leaving only empty space where planets and stars had once existed. The mechanical swarm was visible as a dark cloud moving between systems, consuming everything in its path. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the alien communications from his new position as fleet xenobiologist, noting the complete absence of any recognizable intelligence in the Devourer signals. These machines operated on pure programmed instinct, designed to consume and replicate without any consideration for the life they destroyed. They represented the ultimate expression of efficiency without conscience. The final battle for galactic civilization was about to begin, with humanity standing as the last hope against an enemy that had never known defeat. Admiral Stone gave the order to engage, and the Earth fleet moved toward its destiny among the stars. The age of the Deathworlders had truly begun, and the galaxy would learn whether human determination could overcome mechanical perfection.